next session. Utsav, next slide, please. I would like to welcome my colleague, Ms. Madhavi Joshi, who is Senior Program Director at CEE. She is in charge for the youth program at the center, as well as coordinates a lot of urban and rural community programs. She is a focal point for education for sustainable development programs at center. She is also in charge for CEE Academy, which she has recently started. So I would like to welcome Ms. Joshi to give us an overview of the Act to Restore campaign.
Thank you, Preeti, and a very warm welcome to everybody to this webinar today. Just to give you a brief overview about the campaign that we launched on June 5, which is called Act to Restore. Can we have the next slide? So the Act to Restore campaign basically is in line with the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration's theme to reimagine, restore, and recreate. And the campaign focuses on the various ecosystems, such as oceans and coasts, freshwater to grasslands to urban areas. And as part of this, we have done activities which include development of IC material. We've developed a set of posters, and we're doing thematic webinars. Today's webinar is the third webinar of that series of webinars that are being done as part of the campaign. We also have planned workshops and events during the months that the activities are expected to happen around those particular ecosystems. And we have aligned those to certain important days, like we had a workshop on the World Tiger Day and the World Mangroves Day and so on. We also have organized competitions, and which will happen through the year till November. So then I have the next slide, please. So. So this is the poster, as I was mentioning, as part of the 6 themes. And the focus is on choices, voices, and actions. So looking at not just understanding, developing the awareness and understanding about a particular theme and about ecosystem restoration, but also about what actions one can take at one's own individual, group, and community level. So the 3 choices, voices, and actions are also part of the Generation Restoration campaign, which the UNEP and FAO is jointly conducting as part of the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration. Next, please. We have launched this competition at, to begin with. It is to do with taking pictures, photographs of various ecosystems, and this is in partnership with the FEE's Young Reporters for the Environment program that CEE is a national operator of. So we're trying to leverage partnerships and programs which CEE and its partners are involved in to engage young people actively in this campaign. So this photography competition invites young students between the age of 11 to 25 and submit their photographs on the 30th of October. Similarly, there will be 2 more campaigns, one on article writing, one on videos. We are also aligning a program with the campaign with the FE's campaign on biodiversity this year, and that would include joining the quiz competitions and other activities that happen simultaneously. Next, please. Vicky mentioned about the CEE Academy, which was also launched on the June 5th, and the focus is transformative learning for sustainable development. So we are offering courses which are at the moment online, and these courses are open for various target groups, including youth, teachers, practitioners, decision makers, and we're looking at variety of backgrounds. Short-term and long-term, both kinds of courses have been envisaged. We presently are offering the Ecosystem Restoration Certificate course, which has started on June 19th and will continue um, till the 24th of December. And this course is offered every Saturday for an hour input session by experts, followed by a 3-hour assignment, and which participants have to look at. There is also every module focuses on a particular ecosystem and is spread over 4 Saturdays. So that's the general outline of the Ecosystem Restoration Certificate course. We have an interesting set of participants, and we encourage others to join, because we also have participants joining the full course and participants joining modules which they feel interested in. There is the other course that is getting launched very soon in September is the Green Teacher short-term courses. So these are the two, and we are very soon going to announce many more courses during this year. Next, please. So this is the Ecosystem Restoration Certificate course, and the web link is here. I think Utsav, you should also put it in the chat for people to take it down. Yeah. And the course is looking at the 9 principles of restoration, which basically say what kind of what does good restoration mean, and we look at local contexts, well-defined objectives and goals, looking at all kinds of knowledge, addressing drivers of degradation. It needs to be looking at in a continuum of practices, not just a one-off initiative. Also, the highest recovery possible for human and planetary health. So it looks at the planet as a whole and involves people in fair and inclusive ways. So these are the principles. Some of also looks at measuring results and supporting structures that impact to ensure that the impacts last. So these are the 9 principles which have been under discussion as part of the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration. And we are basing all the courses, especially the Ecosystem Restoration course, on these 9 principles. Next, please. Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you so much. And any questions, you please do feel free to write to us and engage with us on the C Academy link, which will share. Thank you very much. Over to Preeti.
Yeah, thank you so much, Madhya. Now we get into the main theme of this webinar, which is freshwater ecosystems. So next slide, please. I would like to welcome our guest of honor for this webinar. I'm privileged to welcome Shri Rajiv Ranjan Mishra, who is Director General at NMCG, and Shri Kartikeya Sarabhai, who is Director, Center for Environment Education. So just a brief introduction of both the guests. Shri Rajiv Ranjan Mishra ji is an IAS officer from 1987 batch. He is currently working at the rank of Secretary in the Government of India. His position right now in National Mission for Clean Ganga is Director General. He is working since 2018 and spearheading the Namam Gange program, and which is an integrated river rejuvenation approach with multiple activities spanning across 11 states of Ganga River Basin, creating a model river rejuvenation program in India. He has been responsible for various policy level interventions, including the ecological flow notification of 2018, completing multiple projects for Aviralta and Nirmalta of River Ganga. He is making pioneering efforts of developing framework for planning for river cities by mainstreaming river and water into urban master plans. Presently, he is also in charge of National River Conservation Directorate, looking after rivers outside Ganga Basin. He is a mechanical engineer from IIT Kanpur. He has in the past looked after various departments at state level, such as irrigation, municipal administration, urban development, infrastructure, and as secretary, principal secretary, he has worked on various positions. In Government of India, he has worked in several areas, and it's a long list of experience and the positions he has held. He has attended many national and international level trainings and seminars, and has been very motivating in starting a lot of new programs for river rejuvenation. With this, I would like to give a brief introduction of Shri Kartikeya Sarabhai. He is one of the world's leading environmental educator and a dedicated community builder. He was educated in Cambridge and went to do postgraduate work in development communication at the MIT. Shri Sarabhai is the founder director at the Center for Environmental Education, which is headquartered in Ahmedabad, with 40 offices across India. His primary focus is greening of India's formal education system and initiatives related to biodiversity conservation. He is a trustee of the Sabarmati Ashram Preservation and Memorial Trust. Mr. Sarabhai is also a member of many committees set up by Government of India and other organizations. He is recipient of 2016 International Bradwin Medal by the Bradwin Institute and IUCN CEC in recognition of his lifetime work for inspiring new generation to experience, embrace, and love nature firsthand. In 2012, the President of India conferred him with Padma Shri, one of the India's highest civilian award. Mr. Sarabhai is also co-chair of the Earth Charter International Council, chairholder of UNESCO Chair on Education for Sustainable Development and the Human Habitat. He is a co-chair of First Priority Action Area Advancing Policy of the Global Action Program. As a well-known advocate of ESD, Mr. Sarabhai has actively contributed in global negotiation process around the UN Decade on Education for Sustainable Development and the formulation of Sustainable Development Goals. So I welcome you both the guests, Shri Mishra ji and Mr. Sarabhai. Before I invite Mr. Mishra and Mr. Sarabhai to address the audience, we would like to launch the poster on freshwater ecosystem, which is an e-poster. Utsav, can I have the...
Preeti, you will have to do that because Utsav, I think, has lost his connection.
Okay, so okay, yeah. Well, I'll do that.
Please,
I'll do that. Yeah.
You have the presentation.
Yeah, I have the presentation. I'll just open it. So as we are working virtually with the COVID, so the poster will be launched also virtually. So this is the poster which we are launching in collaboration with Namami Gange program, which is on rivers and lakes, how the rivers are important, what are the threats they are facing, and talking about what can be done what kind of choices, voices, and actions can be taken for restoring freshwater ecosystem. So this is an e-poster which will be available on CE's website as an IEC material for reference for schools, for colleges, for anyone who is interested in the topic. With this, I would like to invite Shri Mishra ji to give his remarks.
Thank you, Preeti ji. Thank you, Madhavi ji. It's very nice to see Mr. Sarabhai, even if virtually after quite some time. Of course, we meet very regularly with Mr. Suresh Babu and also Dr. Fayaz. Advantage of being in Delhi. So I feel really very happy to be part of this campaign and join all of you. In fact, we have done several work together with all the stakeholders whom I see here, and I hope that we'll continue this journey with much more enthusiasm and strength in future as well. It's very important, the work. I must really compliment CE for taking up this campaign and Act to Restore campaign and pick up different themes for different months. And in fact, all those themes are important in some way or the other. If you look at rejuvenation of Ganga and its basin, I think all those themes have some role to play or something to do with our work. And but today let's be focused upon freshwater ecosystem, and I would like to share some of our work. In fact, one important lesson in this Namami Gange mission was that we have to look at things integratedly. So whether it is looking at the basin, looking at the river as a system, instead of only picking up few cities on the bank of river where more or less we know what are those cities where pollution is very heavy, and then only doing few infrastructure projects here and there. That kind of approach was not agreed to in this mission, and then we looked at river as a whole. In fact, 2016, one notification came making NMCJ an authority under EP Act. That actually gave a very good fundamental principles for rejuvenation of a river. I think first of its kind principles were laid down. And one major principle was we will manage this river as a system. So when we say manage as a system, so it is the main river of Ganga, its tributaries, then there are several sub-tributaries, streams, wetlands, springs, floodplains. They are all part of river system. And keeping that in mind, we started looking at several activities. And of course, when you manage all these systems, then naturally the forest and biodiversity becomes automatically part of that and becomes very, very important part of conservation efforts. So I think with that kind of approach, we divided, look at certain things for the pollution abatement, what we say Nirmal Ganga. Look at improving ecology and flow related things, and then that becomes our Aviral Ganga. But this cannot be done unless you have the right kind of knowledge, unless you have cooperation of public. And that's why people's outrage, connecting, People River Connect has to improve. And that's where organization like CE has done great work. And then we also got benefit of some of your help. So I think that becomes a very important part of our mission. It has people be happy. We have created a lot of community cadres. We have Ganga Praharis, we have got Ganga with a lot of cadres we have been able to develop. And I am really very happy to see sometimes these community workers take up the cause of Ganga, and then they try to protect dolphins, they try to protect some of those animals. And we have brought to the focus two things. I think coming back to the river and wetland, one thing is wetland conservation. We are trying to scale it up to the basin level. I think all along Ganga, let's say, I think like in UP, we tried to enumerate within 10 kilometers of the river, how many wetlands are there. And we are trying to get support the state government to develop a integrated management plan for all these wetlands. Wetland International, WWF, Suresh is here. So they are all helping us in developing that kind of technical plan. But that cannot be done unless you very clearly involve local community. And that's why some of these Ganga Prahari, some of the other cadres which are wetland mitras. So I think we are also trying to involve them. Then other aspect is, perhaps today we will not talk more about that, but the urban wetlands are also very important because we are losing them very fast. And the encroachments and all kinds of things. So I think I will not talk much about urban, but my emphasis is, apart from construction of STP with a long-term approach, we are trying to get into the master plan for the cities and then put in place, give some importance to the river, give importance to water, and what we typically call water sensitive urban design. That's very important because that is the only long-term approach which will save us. The saving of river or saving of or conserving wetland becomes even more important if you look at the present scenario of climate change. I think yesterday only we have got the IPCC report, which actually gives a much more red signal is given to us. And if you look at it, it predicts that perhaps in future you are going to have much more erratic rain. It says that perhaps we are going to have more rainfall. And then if your wetlands are in good health, if they are protected, they are conserved, their capacity is not compromised, perhaps they will be able to help the mankind. I mean, they will be able to mitigate these kind of disasters and their impact. So I think it becomes very important to reach out to the community and somehow communicate it in a very, very understandable way that if they encroach the wetland, if they do agriculture beyond a point where it is not to be done, I think it's not going to be sustainable. And then loss of biodiversity, I think we are all aware the way we are losing wetland, it's much faster than we perhaps lose forest. We have lost perhaps more number of species in last decade than earlier. So I think these are all very important parameters to look at. And that's why in our mission, we have given importance to the wetland apart from the river, direct river. Now from last 2 years, we are actually trying to focus upon small streams, a small rivers. So I would also invite CE to work on that, because through different projects, you have presence at the field level. So in various districts, there are some small rivers which are known only at the district level. But even that river is important. It's ecologically important, it's socially important. But most of these rivers are either getting converted into nala or a canal. So I think that again becomes a challenge, and that again becomes something which we must look at. And biodiversity. So I think CE is aware. I mean, you were our partner quite early on, even before Namami Gange was launched. And then during Namami Gange also, we took up a very successful project with your support in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, going to the school children and also going to the village communities to make them aware about dolphin. You will be very happy that from those days we have come a long way. I think the distribution range of dolphin is improving. More sightings are there, and then not only dolphin, the other biodiversity thing also. I think it's a kind of overall impact and community awareness which is actually helping us. And that helped us in actually taking it to the highest level. And then Honorable PM announced Project Dolphin last year. I think not only Gangetic dolphin, I think it is going to be of use to all the dolphins in whether it is riverine or marine dolphin. So I think it has gone to a much different level. But again, all these projects, we have to ensure that they do not remain only on in the domain of officers or governments. They have to reach, they have to touch the heart of people, they have to reach to the villagers, they have to reach the community. And that is where, to do all these things, Nirmalta, Viralta, and people connection, we need lot of knowledge. We need help of the experts. We need the experts in different field and also experts in communication. So I think that I'm very happy to know that some good courses, certificate course, etc. has been done on the ecosystem restoration. I feel there is a huge need to understand river and river science. And then I'm basically taking advantage of presence of Mr. Sarabhai, because he can think and he can come up with some really good innovative answer. And we can perhaps, I'm talking to several institutes. IIFM, we are trying to work. They have tried, Indian Institute of Forest Management, they are trying to develop a course, Forestry for River Rejuvenation, and to talk to not the forest officers, but anyone. So I think we need to develop some of these courses which could be, and then the COVID has at least taught us to work online, virtually, and then develop several things. So I think possibilities are unlimited. We can work together. And so I think, can we develop some sort of basic course? People do not understand river or freshwater ecosystem. What we are talking, can we reach out to a larger audience? The larger audience of people. See, now I am trying to reach out to some of the planning schools, the SPAs and SEPT and all these institutes. We organize a thesis competition among those students, that those who want to work on city and the river. I think on 19th, we are going to listen to them. So I think a lot of interest has come. Now, many people say that we also want to participate. So it's only, we organize a Ganga Quest, an online quiz. I think some of your colleagues are aware about it. And even during the worst COVID time, we got the participation of around 11 lakhs people. So I think, and from all over India and abroad also. So I think we have to think about doing some of these things and reach out to more and more people, target people who are studying in different colleges. But what we have a specialization in ecology, we have hydrologists, we have civil engineers, we have all kinds of people. But river requires all the expertise put into one to understand the river. It also needs a lot of sociology and cultural inputs. So I think, can we think of doing something like that as part of this larger long-term campaign? I know time is short, and then this is such a subject, and the kind of people I see, I feel like sharing more of thought, but I will restrict myself. But I would be very happy to take this forward, and then move onto this thing. And especially your other campaigns are also there. And then the last one, which you talked about, the urban areas. Maybe we would be very keen, even on mountains also. We are trying to do a kind of good scientific mapping of the springs in Uttarakhand, in especially Tehri area, with the help of IIT Roorkee, NIH, and some of the organizations. So I think there would be need, there would be perhaps possibility to collaborate upon several areas, and let's use this opportunity to take a kind of pledge to work collaboratively, because collaboration and capacity building, these are the two things, and communication, perhaps three C's, which will be very, very important to really do a good job, a satisfactory job on this kind of Herculean task. So thank you once again for inviting me, giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts with you. And I'm quite sure this will be a beginning of another partnership together for several other activities in future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I would request Shri Sarabhai to.
Thank you, Preeti. It's really nice to have Mr. Mishra here today, and as you rightly say, we look forward to doing things with you. We've got a wonderful history of doing innovative work with NMCG, and even before that, looking at the river. And as you rightly say, fresh water is something which is very intricately connected with people and their behavior. You know, in some types of environment problems, basically it's the industry and a few other actors who have to play the majority role. But in water, I think just about every stakeholder is really involved. And which is why education and participation, a sense of ownership and pride in the water which they have, understanding the fact that these resources are limited and scarce is so critical. And in fact, CE was created for that. When the ministry was creating this thing, seeing that education and communication has to be one of the pillars of India's strategy going forward, like you say, along with technology and everything else. So we do really look forward to this. We've had programs of a variety of nature. We've taken single cities like the Bhoj wetland and really developed a whole exhibition around there. Everyone sees how the water comes. We worked with you on the Ganga, also using dolphin as a symbol for a much larger thing. It's not that we want to save the dolphin alone, but the dolphin, if you save, it means that you've saved so many other things. And developing campaigns which people relate to, as you rightly say, today that symbol has become something which has led to the Prime Minister's also creating a special thing. Earlier you used to only hear about the tiger and you used to hear about the elephants. But now you also have the dolphin put up there in terms of what it can. Really map the wetlands, and the wetland atlases are available. And as you say, Mr. Mishra, the lakes which are there, even in the city of Ahmedabad, where I'm speaking from now, we've got only maybe 20% of the lakes which are there about 100 years ago. Most of them are seen as excess land which you can take over and things. But today, there is a very strong legislative backing in terms of not being able to convert these lands. And I think if people also understand the value, they understand the value between the fresh water which they see on the surface and underground water. If they see the impact of overusing chemical fertilizers and pesticides and how it goes into their water stream, I think this cycle is one of the first things which you even learn in science about the water cycle. Today we are talking about a circular economy where we are trying to learn the cyclical nature of everything which is in nature. And nature itself has no concept of waste. And at the same time, humans who consider ourselves to be one of the most advanced of species are putting such pressure. You were talking about the IPCC report, which came out 2 days ago on climate change, but even visually, you cannot go to villages in India, let alone cities, and not see so much plastic waste. And waste which is going into every one of our river systems, and fresh water then connects to the ocean, and you pollute the ocean. So I think this is one thing, as Madhvi was saying, the fact that the youth are such a power in India, and if you can really mobilize them at the village level, at the city level, at colleges, we've got this campaign which we are doing with UNEP and WWF on really looking at champions for preventing plastics from going. Now, is it a campaign for plastic or is it a campaign for water? Sometimes we do these forestry campaigns, but as you rightly say, a good forestry will prevent certain things going into the water, prevent erosion happening. So these ecosystems are all connected. But water is something which is which is very much can be seen by people. The pollution and other things can be seen. Ozone layers and things you can't actually see. You see the impacts of it. But water is something which people is part of their daily life. And in India, we got such a emotional connect with the Ganga. It's not only a connect which is scientific, but it's also emotional. It's spiritual. I must say that I went last to Ganga. I knew how much polluted it was, but I could not help dipping myself in it. You know, I forgot my science, and I said, maybe I must dip. I've come to Banaras, and I must dip in it, because that's the way we all grown up, and we've grown up looking at these as holy sites. And I think taking that spirit, that you cannot have holy sites and then also throw rubbish into it. I mean, you have to understand what this is. So I think these webinars and this thing will go a long way in preparing. You yourself said that you have some wonderful cadres now. And I think we, as CE, I can talk on behalf of all my colleagues, would love to work with you and really see that we also, like we've done in the past, play a role in achieving the objectives which NMCG has and the country has. So thank you, and it's wonderful to be in the same forum with you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Preeti.
Thank you so much to both our guests, and very, very important points which Mr. Mishra also raised, and Mr. Sarabhai also said that what is the pathway for, like, this is the overall decade of ecosystem restoration, and we have 10 years to actually achieve and see that our ecosystems are in good shape and we are able to restore them, not only for the current generation but also for future generations. So it's a very important area. So with this, with the overview of the why we need to restore ecosystems, freshwater ecosystems, and how it is connected to other ecosystems. So now I would like to go to our guest speakers who are going to take us in more depth about the program. So I would like to invite our guest speaker, Mr. Suresh Babu, who is Director, Rivers, Wetlands and Water Policy at WWF India. He has long experience of working in this area. Just a second. He has been very active in terms of taking up a lot of new initiatives and projects along rivers and wetlands in UP, Punjab and Bihar. And there are a lot of restoration work is going on and looking at how things can be improved and how research and action projects could lead into biodiversity conservation and other areas. So I welcome you, Mr. Suresh Babu, to give us more understanding about freshwater ecosystems, and so that we understand the freshwater ecosystem well and could contribute towards its conservation. So over to you, Mr. Babu.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Preeti ji. Respected DG Sir, Shri Kartikeya Sarabhai ji, Dr. Fayaz, and Madhvi ji. Thank you for this opportunity to share a few thoughts. So basically your slogan for the whole campaign is Act to Restore. So I'm going to focus more on what could be done practically using some examples. While I start with a basic introduction to freshwater ecosystem, because I was told that the audience has a lot of youth, particularly from schools going to be there. So can I share my screen, Preeti ji? Can I share my screen?
Yes. You could share your screen. I'll just try, I think, yeah.
So the focus of my talk is about the interlinkages between freshwater ecosystems and the various components, including the terrestrial ecosystems, the sectors, the drivers, etc., so that we can have better conservation outcomes. And in this particular context, DG Sir set a very good context about how NMCG is looking at various interlinkages. He particularly talked about the connection with cities, talked about wetlands, talked about groundwater and pollution. So I'm going to sort of supplement some of those ideas that DG Sir mentioned. Particularly when we are talking about freshwater ecosystems, we are talking about two systems, LOTIC and LENDIC. Again, for the youth and the school children who are there in the call and the webinar today, LOTIC is the system which actually flows. It's flowing water. So river, springs, streams, etc. are categorized under LOTIC, and LENDIC is kind of sluggish, not flowing, kind of system. That's lakes, ponds, wetlands are categorized under this. I'm just telling you this because they both are also connected, and we going forward, we'll see how we need to manage these together going forward. So freshwater ecosystem, again, we heard the earlier speakers and also the overview that was given by CE. So how these freshwater ecosystems support a lot of freshwater biodiversity, right from the endangered animals to more charismatic species that we see, otters or dolphins or gharials or turtles, to fascinating migratory birds to mahashir and other kind of fish species. What is important is also that these freshwater ecosystems are particularly important for the services that we are getting, and this I wanted to highlight because there are many cities in India which are today struggling for water, and they get water from longer distances because they don't have freshwater resources within their city. So whether it is wetlands, whether it is degraded rivers, these ecosystems are very, very important from a provisioning point of view, which is water supply, which is food, which is fiber, which is medicinal resources, etc. It also helps in regulating. So we heard about the reference to the IPCC report about extreme weather events happening, and also the temperatures going up. So climate regulation is one of the key regulating services offered by some of the freshwater ecosystems that we are talking about, whether it is rivers or wetlands. And in fact, wetlands are the largest carbon sinks. They act as carbon sequestration points because of the nature and the soil and the plants that they host. They also control erosion. They also control flooding. Supporting services from nutrient cycling, very, very important. Photosynthesis to soil formation to cultural services in terms of aesthetic values, recreational values, etc. It offers a lot of services. And in terms of efforts to quantify these ecosystem services, many efforts have happened. There was an initiative by the MOEFCC, the GIZ, and called as a TEEP. It has quantified the ecosystem benefits, economic value of ecosystem benefits derived from various wetlands across the country. However, DG sir referred to this. Globally, when you look at the Freshwater Living Planet Index, which is published once in 2 years by WWF and a set of other partner institutions, the freshwater species have shown a 83% decline since 1970, and that's the largest decline across various ecosystems that we are seeing. And when it translates to India, if you look at the gharial distribution, the distribution areas, the habitats have really shrunk, and it's said that the number of breeding adults in the wild are less than 200 across the country. Same thing, if you look at Indus River dolphins, the historic habitat range is there in the black and white map, which was mapped in the 1870s by John Anderson, a British officer. Currently, the distribution ranges are very, very little. So there is something that is happening which is not really nice. Wetland, again, there was a reference. 35% of the wetlands have been lost since 1970, and the rate of loss of wetlands are more than 3 times that of the forest. So what are the threats? So we heard about this overexploitation, whether it is water, whether it is sediments, climate change, pollution, invasive species, and habitat loss and degradation, which is basically the land use and land cover changes. Now, how do we sort of reverse the trend? So this is very, very important. And I just wanted to impress upon you four key points. One, we need a multidisciplinary approach. And again, I'm again and again referring to what DG sir mentioned, because he outlined this very beautifully. River science is very, very complicated. It's a complex science, and no one individual or institution can actually. Hello. Sorry, there was some background noise. Yeah, so the river science, to understand a river, you need multiple expertise and disciplines to come together. It has a socio-economic angle. Ganga, for instance, or even a small river like Kali Bain, it's very important for the Sikhs. Whether you look at Kaveri, whether you look at Krishna, you look at Brahmaputra, there are various religious and cultural significance attached to these rivers. There is a lot of livelihood and socio-economic activities happening. Sediment transport, nutrient cycling, and energy transport is very, very important. So we need to understand how these sediment transports happen, what sediment dynamics exist in these rivers, because that also determines what a healthy river is all about. Water is important. So water for rivers is very important, and probably this is an area which is getting more attention these days. We are talking about ecological flows, where we are trying to understand how much water is required to call a river, because currently many of our rivers are overexploited and they flow lean and dry and thin. Water quality and pollution aspects and biodiversity, along with the hydraulics. So this comprises river science, and this is important. Whether you take a wetland, whether you take a river, whether lentic or lotic ecosystems, we need to bring these disciplines together to have a holistic approach towards restoration of these systems. Therefore, there is also a discussion around, how do we sort of in a holistic way understand river or a wetland health. So people have been talking about it, and recently in 1920, the MOEFCC came up with a framework to assess wetland health. I'm just using that as an example here, which actually look at long-term trends in the wetland area, how much of the wetland area has been lost due to land use changes, how the hydrology and the catchment dynamics have changed, how the water quality has changed, how the biodiversity supported by the wetland has changed, and what kind of governance systems exist. So for each of this, there is a detailing that is available, but just wanted to impress upon you that this is the 5 aspects that contributes wetland health. Now, if you were to to mirror this to river health, more or less, you cover some, these aspects, but one key integral component for river health will also be the sediment or geomorphological aspects. The second one, again, there was a mention about how the Ganga basin is now being managed as a basin. Connectedness is important. So therefore, a systems approach is important. And so looking at the basin as a unit, whether a wetland, whether it is an aquifer, whether it is a tributary or a river of any stream order, it's important to be placed within a basin as a unit. And quite often what we see is that wetland managers across the country, across different states, do not really look at wetlands being located within a basin, or aquifers within a basin. So that has serious complications, because what you do for restoration of a wetland in one place may have huge significance downstream as well. So we need to look at how the upstream and downstream components of the river basins will react to a particular intervention that we will take up. And most importantly, in the first figure, you will see that the river, this is taken from an easy mode publication, and it beautifully explains how the river ends up through estuaries into an ocean. And so therefore, this is something that we don't really look at, how the river management in the upper reaches are really impacting the deltas of our country in terms of freshwater flows, in terms of energy flows, and nutrient flows, and sediment flows. And that's something as an area of more research and active work. The second image actually talks about the connectedness that I talked about. So while in the first figure you'll see that you've seen oxbow lakes, but there are basins in our country where wetlands actually form the streams. And if you actually look at the southern part of the country, the system tanks which were created in the past, actually they overflow and they flow from one wetland to another, creating a stream. And now, because these wetlands or these tanks are lost, the stream flows have been impacted. So therefore, to understand that, these tanks need to be managed within the basin context is also important. So the figure here shows how a wetland need to be managed in the context of a basin, but also how the cities need to be sort of look at the management of its water resources so that it doesn't pollute and create a huge footprint impact on the rivers as well as the wetlands. So together, the management of the wetland, the urban water management, and the other aspects can lead to an improved river health. So connectedness is something that is important to keep in mind. This is a study that WWF has done with some global institutions to look at the connectivity status of various rivers, and it was found that more than 2/3 of the long rivers in the world have lost its connectivity, and connectivity is defined in terms of the amount of water regulation, amount of water withdrawal that has happened, amount of fragmentation that has happened. So it's an indicator that was developed. Again, if you look at some of, India being a huge country, we believe that there are many smaller rivers which are still intact and which are under threat of losing its connected status. So maybe it is worthwhile for us to look at how we can protect these last remaining free-flowing rivers. The third point that I want to make is that, whether it is a floodplain, whether it is a river, whether it is an aquifer or a wetland, there are these multi-dimensional connectivity that exists. So when the river flows from the headwaters, there is a longitudinal flow that happens. So whenever you put a break to it, it gets disconnected. And so therefore, ensuring the longitudinal connectivity is important. So one, can we avoid disruption in longitudinal connectivity? Second, if the longitudinal connectivity is already impacted, can we actually look at restoring the connectivity through in like restoration of environmental flows? The second aspect is the lateral one, and this is something that a lot more work is required in our country, and at least in the Ganga Basin initiative has happened in UP to look at the river floodplain and floodplain wetland connectivity, and which is kind of a pioneering effort that is happening. But most of the wetlands across the country are under threat, and this is again an important aspect of freshwater integrity, ecosystem integrity that we are talking about. The third one is, again, connecting the wetland and aquifers. In many areas, wetlands are recharging aquifers and aquifers are feeding rivers. And therefore, this recognition of the fact that wetlands and aquifers and rivers need to be co-managed is going to be very, very important. And therefore, mapping of which rivers are fed by aquifers and which rivers are draining water into aquifers is kind of an important assessment that we need to do. And the opportunity is that the aquifer mapping project that is happening across the country is an opportunity to sort of understand that. The fourth and the last point that I want to make is around engaging multiple stakeholders, because there are competing water users, industry, domestic, and agriculture. And when you actually look at it in a basin, this is quite kind of a tense kind of an interaction that happens, and we have experienced ourselves also in many places that industry doesn't have confidence on agriculture sector. Agriculture doesn't believe in the arguments and in the initiatives of industry, etc. So how do you sort of bring these guys together to set the vision for our freshwater ecosystems is something very, very important. So bringing them, convening them, having a shared vision for our rivers and wetlands. Therefore, the freshwater ecosystems is also going to be a very, very challenging task, but very, very critical and integral to basin governance going forward. I just want to place before you three quick case studies. I'm not going to get into details. One is from the south of India. It is in Bangalore, a wetland in Bangalore rural district. As I mentioned, in southern part of the country, the wetlands are quite often you see cascade wetland. And this is one classic case of a small wetland in an industrial area, which the district administration, the industries, in the area, the local panchayat and WWF came together in the year 2017 to sort of restore. What we did was, as I said, the interactions with the catchment, and therefore the hydrology of the wetland was very, very important. So what we did was to do a mapping of the land cover changes over 1970 to 2018, which actually threw up critical insights into why the wetland was shrinking. And if you look at this, the wetland from a huge purple area to a small purple in 2015, it shrunk significantly. Not necessarily because of the changes in the precipitation, but because of the land use and the blockades in the feeder channels. So what happened was then the group, a multi-stakeholder committee, wetland committee chaired by the DC, the deputy commissioner, equivalent to the DMs in North India, was formed. And that committee undertook a survey and identified the areas within the catchment to be treated. In terms of sanitation, in terms of restoration of connectivity, and in terms of the in situ wetland treatment that was required. Fortunately, in this area, the pollution was not a major issue. It was basically the invasives and blockade in the connecting channels. So it was based on a series of technical studies, bathymetry, hydrological mapping, and stakeholder engagement, this wetland got revived in 2019. And I'm very glad to say that, despite COVID and all the problems, the committee is quite active and it is maintaining the channels. And even this year, fortunately, we have good rains and Bashadahalli is receiving a good amount of water. Why this is important is because the area is highly stressed in terms of groundwater, and we are seeing significant improvements in the groundwater within this 2 years in itself. I know it's too short a time period to assess the impacts, but the progress is very, very encouraging. And this falls in the Arkavadi basin, and currently WWF is planning to scale up this work in around 15 wetlands in the basin. Second, agriculture water management. So quite often we hear about agriculture being, the biggest consumer of water, and it impacts a lot on the water diversions, and so a lot of our rivers flow dry because of agriculture water use. So this was an opportunity. So with UP Irrigation Department in a district, Bijnor of Uttar Pradesh, WWF engaged with a small set of farmers. It was a proof of concept that we were to work on, combining demand side management. Basically, this is a sugarcane area, so the Krishi Vigyan Kendras are quite progressive, I must say, in terms of their innovations in better management practices, but it was not really adopted by people. So a dissemination of these POPs, and there was a uptake of this package of practices by the farmers, which reduced the water use in this irrigation command. And the irrigation command was fed by the Ramganga river from a barrage called Harewali Barrage. And this because water was not reaching regularly, water was only reaching till headwaters, and the middle end and the tail end canals were in a dilapidated situation. Water users associations were not formed, despite UP having a Participatory Irrigation Management Act. So we combined these three approaches along with the UP Irrigation Department, local communities, and the Ramganga Mitras. We actually could facilitate the adoption of science as well as adoption of better management practices in agriculture. And I'm very pleased to say that till May 2021, we've been able to bring around 70 million liters of water back into a river called Karula. Karula is a small tributary of Gagan, which is a tributary of the Ramganga. And year on year, since 2019, water is regularly flowing back from the irrigation system into this river. And thanks to the belief of the farmers and the people who are following these practices, even after the project is over. So this is a small river, but a beautiful Karula downstream of the irrigation outlet. The last one from again, working with, I'm just trying to highlight, what all avenues exist for local stakeholders and communities to engage. Community-led turtle conservation, again, everyone knows that riverbed farming is very, very popular in some of our rivers, and quite often chemical-intensive agriculture happens. So what happened was that based on a mapping done by UP Forest Department and WWF, we could identify the areas where turtles hatch, and we, through a committed communication campaign, engagement campaign, we work with the farmers, and these are mostly contract farmers, to convince them to secure this land for the turtle nesting. And so what they did was to leave 40 meters of land where turtles used to nest, free from agriculture, and they cultivated away from 40 meters away from the riverbank. And this again helped in trying out in situ conservation of turtle nests. Earlier, it was identifying the hatcheries, which was found by the farmers, then shifting it into a nursery, and then hatching it there. But right now, the approach is to protect the nest in situ, and it was again possible because of the support of these farmers. Again, similar initiative in Ramganga. But again, local villages, they are not on a paid basis engaged in this particular aspect. They are farmers, they are interacting with the river day to day, and they know where the turtles are nesting, and they came forward to help in conserving these species. The last one, Digi sir again mentioned about the Mitras. Mitras are friends of the river or prahiris, the volunteers who are great resources for understanding the river. So in our areas of work, they help in conducting river health assessments, wetland health assessments. And I just want to share this example. During the lockdown, Bias Mitra in the Bias River, the only habitat of Indus River dolphins, it was the Mitras who were the ferrymen and the fishermen who actually helped record the dolphin sightings and how they were migrating upstream, and incredible information that came through. And so this is again a model that NMCG is trying out in various parts of Ganga, and it's worth trying this in other parts of our country as well. So Act to Restore is a great campaign, and I think you had these three pillars of engagement, and we will be happy to sort of share some of the collaterals that we have developed with the NMCG and also other stakeholders in communicating with some of those enthusiastic and inspired individuals and organizations, and we'll be happy to sort of take this conversation forward. Once again, thank you, and over to you, Preeti.
Thanks a lot, Sureshi. And it was really wonderful to understand the entire freshwater ecosystem from a different perspective. Like we always talk about when we like address to teachers and discuss about ecology. And even when I have studied about ecology, like everything is interdependent and interconnected and very well like explained. And I believe we should have this kind of talk available in different languages so that students and teachers can understand how important it is when we are discussing about ecosystems to connect with different aspects, because it's not only, we cannot see river as a system alone or a wetland system alone, but we have to understand it in a holistic manner. So it's quite beautifully explained, and like it was like I could learn a lot of things from your session, sir. So with this, now I will request our next guest speaker to come and share his work. Dr. Fayaz Ahmed Khudsar is the next speaker. He is trained in environmental biology and wildlife biology. He has over 20 years of experience, and his interest in ecological restoration, wildlife research, and he initiated his work in field of aquatic biology. He is master's in environmental biology from University of Delhi, and he has done PhD from Kuno National Park of Madhya Pradesh, and a lot of work done on Ghariyal and Gangetic dolphin population conservation and research in Panna, Kanha, and Bandhavgarh. He also has experience of working with Gond, Bega, and Saharia tribes in around protected areas. He has received award for his work in wildlife conservation called Zees Award, and he has also authored books and several research papers internationally in international and national publications. He is right now working under Biodiversity Parks program at the Center for Environmental Management of Degraded Ecosystem at University of Delhi. He has been like working on looking at how the biological communities belonging to Yamuna River Basin and Aravalli Hill Range. So there are his work is related to some of the experiences related to ecosystem restoration. So I would request Dr. Khudsar to share his experience of one of the restoration work which he has done. So over to you, Dr. Khudsar. Dr. Fayaz? It seems he is having some network issues. So, Utsav, if we have few questions to Sureshji, if we can take right now from the participants.
Yes, ma'am. We have a few questions. Like first from the Amrita. In India, how far has the presence of invasive aquatic species disturbed the ecosystem, or do they just from novel ecosystem and exist without much damage? Hello.
Okay, yeah, Dr. Fayaz, I think yes. Dr. Fayaz, can you connect now?
Yes, please,
Yeah.
madam.
Yeah, you can
I'm sorry.
share your screen. Yeah.
Yes, just a moment. Just I will do it. Tough time. Could you see it?
Yeah, we can see.
Is it visible?
Yeah, it's visible. You can make it to presentation mode. Yeah, you
Yes.
can see it now. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much for bringing me here with such a big people like Mishra sir and Sarabhai Sahab, Dr. Suresh, and many other great people are listening to this talk. Actually, issue is very prominent when you look at most of the river, which I don't want to mention the way it is behaving. And the recent problem with river sheep, because I work in Kuno and I have great, and I'm listening that how people are suffering. I have seen that sheep river, tiny river, flowing, never flowing in fact. And today it become a misery for the people. Entire agriculture field, villages, all are flooded. Similarly, the Kuwari river, under which I don't know how many years I played with, today it is so angry that I cannot explain you, because I'm getting many phone call of the people. And on the other hand, recently I visited Varuna and Assi, which makes Varanasi, and I surprised to see no water, filthy water and dirty water. So it's very interesting to understand that how we respect our floodplain, and floodplain becomes very, very important when you talk in terms of river, which Mishra sir and Suresh has already explained to it. You see, even though rivers are filthy, if you see first slide, that is the river Yamuna, the first, what do you call, Siva, that is Najafgarh drain, which was known as Sahibi River once upon a time. And during my master's days in 1992, I remember visiting Najafgarh for bird study. Now that Najafgarh drain brings a lot of raw sewage to river Yamuna. Similarly, down there you see how river become a Siva, even though we respecting river, carrying those that water from river Ganga. So what is a floodplain? It is very important to understand. Many times we simply see floodplain as a landscape feature which get inundated from the neighboring river. But that inundation creates what you call fluvial dynamics, and that fluvial dynamics, in fact, through fluvial dynamics, the river speaks. And the moment you understand how river is interacting with you, only then you intervene. Only then you can produce some sort of restoration. And until unless you understand this, it becomes very difficult for doing what you call short-term restoration work. And therefore, floodplain can be seen as a geomorphic feature formed and influenced by river flows and sediments. So restoration is very important when you restore a river. You look at the depth, bed characteristic, meandering, etc. You restore in a way that every system gets interconnected. And threats, we all know, the biggest threat I found today is land use. Today, an agriculture field in floodplain, tomorrow a building. I don't want to mention even Delhi riverfront, river Yamuna has suffered previously and is still suffering. Similarly, when you look at the mining, entire Chambal region is facing serious problem. Son River facing serious problem. And the other most important part is invasive species for which we are not spending nor seeing it correctly. If you look at the river, any riverine ecosystem and associated wetland, you will find that many weedy species, not simple weedy species and herbaceous weedy species, but woody weedy species in the floodplain like Prosopis juliflora creating serious havoc. Then when you go to wetland, you will find the entire wetland is full of Eichhornia, Alternanthera, etc. And these are something which creates serious issue. Further, serious discharge and industrial influence is creating a lot of problem, and climate change aggravating all these things. So when you look at floodplain, in fact, since students are around, floodplains are seen as an inactive floodplain which do not receive periodic flood, or other is active flood zone which receive even in low flood that receives flood. And since both the landscapes are very different structurally and functionally, therefore you need different set of restoration planning which you do, which I will share you how we did in fact. So historically, when you see the vast floodplain of major river like Ganga and Yamuna had huge network of wetland, and some of which served as catchment wetland, which get flooded during monsoon, and some of them were used as a wastewater discharge, because earlier those drains or sewerage were not going directly to the river, but they were going through these wetlands. But unfortunately, due to various activities, both types of wetlands are threatened with extinction. Many of them we have lost. So therefore, what is the answer? The answer is ecological restoration. And how you do it, actually. In ecological restoration, actually, it's a science of interaction, I must tell you, when you look at ecology. And you learn through the system, and you get what you call some of the taxonomic species utilized as a tool to address many ecological problems. So in ecological restoration, simply you see that you help an ecosystem which is degraded, damaged, or even lost. And when you look at this ecological restoration, it largely based on sound ecological principle. And what it says you need to have a site. The moment you have a site, you look at the ecological history of the site, because unless you have ecological history, preparing prescriptions like doctor for restoration would be very, very difficult. So that ecological history is very important. Then you're trying to find out reference ecosystem. That reference ecosystem will help you to bring out some of those lost ecosystem back to glory. And and when you have all these, then you try to see that how much money you have, how much manpower do you have. Accordingly, you fix your priority. It is not that in one go you spend all this money. So how you plan restoration in inactive floodplain when you see, because most of the time when you visit any inactive floodplain in the country are highly dumped area, means it is full of solid waste dump. Therefore, some sort of landscaping is required, which I'll show you further. Or some of the floodplains are so saline that sometimes pH is 9.2 to 9.8, and therefore you lead to removal of invasive species, then create important niches, restore wetland, and establish floodplain forest, grassland, and marshes. And you need long-term monitoring, because mid-term intervention is very, very required. Why it is needed? In ecological restoration, unless you have a mid-term evaluation, you won't be able to see that what is the direction of restoration. Therefore, monitoring is very, very important. And when you look at the restoration in active floodplain, you restore existing wetland. There are many wetland and marshes all along the floodplain historically, because they exist during flood. Water comes and goes, makes wetland, and they get silted. So you desilt it. Then you establish shoreline establishment, vegetation. Then you remove invasive species and establish floodplain forest and grassland. But mind it, you need to consider many indicator species. What are those indicator species? When you see certain portion has no water, but still there are some aquatic plants like typha and phragmites, suggesting that historically this was a wetland. So you need to restore those wetlands, look at the succession process, you understand the flood pulse. Accordingly, you design and decide the plantation. So now the issue is how to restore these floodplain wetland of the major rivers. So we have our experience of 13 to 18 years where successfully we have restored dead wetlands of river Yamuna in the upstream of Wazirabad, and also brought back some of the vanishing flora and fauna in the form of biodiversity park. The concept evolved and implemented in Delhi for the first time. And first time we came with the concept of biodiversity park. So we found that biodiversity park as a viable option for restoring riverine stretches, especially in urban center. And this model has been given by legendary ecologist, Professor C.R. Babu. So when many people are coming out with this concept, we published the definition of biodiversity park. So biodiversity park is not simple plantation. It's a
Dr. Fayaz? He has lost the connection. He is joining again. Sureshji, can I request you to respond to the question till he joins, because I think there is an internet issue with Dr. Fayaz.
Sure.
I can repeat the question.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. The question is, in India, how far has the presence of invasive aquatic species disrupt the ecosystem, or do they just form novel ecosystem and exist without much damage?
All right. Thanks for this question. So, in fact, there are many studies and also reports by the National Biodiversity Authority, which shows that invasive species, particularly the fish species, have actually disrupted the local endemic species that were available. There are case studies from Yamuna, for instance, the occurrence of tilapia, the African catfish, silver carp, etc., how they're changing the local fish diversity in some of these rivers. Yamuna is one example. I wanted to also give you an example of the Keladev National Park, where we work. It's also a Ramsar site. Because of fish introduction for livelihoods, so there is aquaculture happening in the catchment. So African mangur, African catfish was introduced as a livelihood option, and now the whole wetland is invaded by the African catfish, which actually has distorted the whole ecology, because it is hindering the nesting and breeding habitats of some of the migratory species as well. That's number one. Number two, there are a number of species that have been identified. More than 600 odd ornamental varieties of fish species are available and found in Indian inland waters. And this is again a very important area for all of us to work towards. And I remember attending a meeting by the National Bureau for Fish Genetic Resources, where they were actually talking about a risk assessment framework to look at the ornamental fish trade within the country. Piranhas were found in Kerala. If you remember, there were reports during the massive flood that happened a couple of years back. Piranhas were found from some of the important wetlands. So there is a huge amount of disruption that is happening, and that's the reason why some of this multi-departmental coordination is also required. So while we are looking at livelihood as an option, aquaculture as a livelihood option, we should be also concerned about what kind of fish seeds we are giving to the local people. So the answer is a huge impact is visible on aquatic ecosystem. Water hyacinth is another example. Water lettuce is another example where we are seeing proliferation in many of our wetlands, which have led to eutrophicated status of many of our wetlands and river stretches.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, because we can say a similar example in forest and other places. So invasive species are not always good, and they definitely affect the local species which flourish there. So I believe there is still a problem with Dr. Kutsar. He is not able to join. So, and we are already running late. So I would now request Shri Brijesh Sikka, who is Senior Advisor at NMCG, to give his concluding remarks about the today's webinar. Brijesh ji.
Madam, I hope you are able to hear me now. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, yes.
Yes, we can hear.
You can hear. Yeah. Thanks. We have had very detailed opening remarks by DG and Director CE on the need and the efforts being made for conservation of freshwater ecosystem. And we have had, I'll say, 1.5 excellent presentations on 2 different subjects. To just carry on what DG and CG had said in his opening remarks, when we had started the Namami Gange program, our initial focus was more on pollution abatement. But pollution abatement per se will not be able to conserve the Ganga river ecosystem. So now, over the past few years, we are going more and more into the Aviralta issues and interventions related to afforestation, wetland conservation, biodiversity and fisheries conservation, e-flows improvement, small river rejuvenation, and one new aspect which we have recently started doing work is spring rejuvenation. We have given a project to IIT Roorkee for mapping of springs in the Tehri Garhwal area of Uttarakhand. And as we all know, springs are sources of small river streams, as well as provide a base flow to the tributaries and the main river, Ganga in this case. So these springs, as with many other systems, they are being they are drying up, or they are completely lost, and we are hopeful that this initiative, in which Niti Aayog is also involved, will help us a long way in increasing the base flow in River Ganga and protecting the freshwater ecosystems within the Ganga basin. As already told by Dr. Suresh, the Global Wetland Outlook report had mentioned that about 35% of the wetlands have been lost in the last 50 years. And wetland conservation, I feel, is going to be will play a major role in rejuvenation of Ganga in the near future. Yesterday itself, the IPCC report, which has come out, it has indicated, I'll just quote, continued global warming is projected to further intensify the global water cycle, including its variability, global monsoon precipitation, and severity of wet and dry events. Now we are seeing more and more floods in this monsoon, and wetland conservation is imperative if we are to ensure that these floods are mitigated to a little extent. I'll not say they'll be over, but it will help mitigate these floods. So my personal opinion is that wetland conservation is going to play a major role in freshwater ecosystem management in the future. In addition to pollution abatement, encroachment and other issues, which will definitely be there. I am very glad that CEE has started this campaign, and as already told by DG, we will, NMCG is willing to carry forward this initiative along with WWF and various other partners which are there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your concluding remarks, and very well said, like all the points which we have discussed today. And the last presentation we could not hear, so he just called me that he is not able to connect. So maybe we can hear him in the next coming, because we are going to have sessions in coming weeks. So we'll try and listen to his the case study, the work he has done on restoration. So it's an interesting work which has been done. So I believe a lot of work is being done across India by several people, and under the Namami Gange like umbrella programs, a lot of institutions can come together and we can work for ecosystem restoration in India. So with this, I would request Utsav if you can just put the slide for the coming sessions we are having in this month, which we are observing on the freshwater ecosystem. So on 14th August, we have this session on freshwater ecosystem and how resilience is important in terms of understanding various factors which are affecting the ecosystem. On 21st August, which is again a Saturday, we are discussing, there are speakers who will be talking about what are the issues and concerns related to freshwater ecosystem. So we're getting into more details of what are the issues affecting it. We have touched upon today in the webinar. And on 28th August, we will be looking at conservation measures for restoring rivers and lakes. So a few examples of how it is being done and what are the learnings from those actions which have been taken. And then 4th September, we will be looking at specific stories and discussing with the people who are attending this course and looking at what are their questions, what are their insights and their ideas. So this is how it is planned during the month of August, of taking today's webinar further. And next slide, please. So with this, we come to the end of today's webinar, and I believe together we can all work together to become a generation restore and act to restore with support of all the institutions who are very much keen and concerned about restoring our rivers and wetlands. With this, I would like to thank National Mission for Clean Ganga for partnering with CEE for this Act to Restore campaign on freshwater ecosystem. I am very thankful for Mr. R.R. Mishra ji for basically taking out time and giving his like very important ideas on what is the way forward, how do we work on this, come together and look at small components which are very important. Also want to thank Mr. Sarabhai, who is our director, and he always give us like a vision of how do we go ahead, and it is his idea that we start ecosystem restoration course. so that we are youth who is going into field and studying environment science or any other stream, and they should be able, whenever they go into their jobs or careers, they should be able to work in that area. And I'm very thankful to Mr. Suresh Babu and Dr. Khud sir for taking out time from their very busy schedule and addressing our participants. And this recording we will be sharing, because today many of them could not join. So this recording we will be sharing with a lot of people and teachers and students who are very keen to understand freshwater ecosystem. So it was really understanding the entire thing was very insightful. So I would like to thank both of our guest speakers. I am also thankful to Mr. Brajesh Sikka and Dr. Sandeep Behera who joined us for the program, and other colleagues from NMCG who have been always very supportive in the way the kind of work we are doing along Ganga and other areas. So with this, also my colleagues, Madhvi Joshi, who actually who is anchoring the entire CE Academy program and looking at how this can be done. And there are a lot of people as a support team who are not there. So I would just like to acknowledge them, that Utsav, Jairaj, Jogindra, Deepika, and Shrishti, who have been part of this, the entire campaign we are running from last, this is 3rd month, and we are looking forward for other themes happening. And for this month, we will be celebrating freshwater ecosystem, which brings us hope that we are going to restore it, and if we come together. So thank you so very much to all of you, all the participants who joined this webinar today. So with this, we close the webinar. Thank you so much, and namaskar.
Thank you.